Hello. Well, thank you. Welcome to the Billy Wilder Theater. I'm Claudia Bester. I'm the Director of Public Programs, and I'm utterly thrilled to welcome you to tonight's Hammer Conversation with Diana Nyad and Kathy Opie. The general concept of the Hammer Conversation series is to bring together people from different fields of art, culture, history, and science in provocative conversations of mutual interest. Tonight, is so exciting. We have one of the greatest living photographers and one of the greatest living athletes, and together. And they're friends, they're also collaborators, and ultimately, they are just two badass women, and I'm so thrilled to have them here. Kathy Opie is one of the leading photographers of this generation and a documentarian of the American landscape and the American people. She's had many solo exhibitions, including Kathy Opie Figure in Landscape at the LA County Museum of Art, Catherine Opie, American Photographer at the Guggenheim, Kathy Opie, Chicago at the Museum of Contemporary Art in Chicago. She was a 2009 recipient of the President's Award for Lifetime Achievement from the Women's Caucus for Art, and she was awarded a United States Artist Fellowship in 2006. She is also a professor in the UCLA Department of Art, which is really an honor for us. Diana Nyad is a world-class athlete, inspired writer, and probing journalist. She's a hero to women and swimmers and all kinds of people all around the world. For 10 years, from 1969 to 1979, she was the greatest long-distance swimmer in the world. I think she still is. But in 1979, she stroked the longest swim in history, making the 102-mile journey from the island of Bimini in the Bahamas to Florida. She was inducted into the National Women's Hall of Fame in 1986. She also holds a world record for circling Manhattan Island, which was 28 miles. In the 1980s, she retired from long-distance swimming for a while. She embarked on an illustrious career in television, radio, and print, serving as a correspondent on Fox Sports News. She had her own show on CNBC. She reported for ABC Sports. She was a longtime contributor to All Things Considered on NPR and reported on the business of sport for Marketplace on American Public Media. She was a contributor to CBS News Sunday Morning. She's written several books and contributed several pieces to the New York Times and magazines and other publications. And for the last 4 years, she's been training for these incredible feats that we all know about. She was also very renowned as a motivational speaker during that time. And she has made many attempts to swim from Cuba to Florida, and I think we all know how it turned out. But I want to give you a little background in case you forget some of the details. Her first attempt was in 1978. She was 28 years old. She swam for 42 hours and was 76 miles before certain conditions forced her to stop. The second attempt was at age 60. In 2011, she swam for 29 hours before, I believe in that case it was weather conditions, forced her to stop. Then in September 2011, a month later, she did her third attempt. She swam for 41 hours, 67 miles. Her fourth attempt was, I think, in 2012. And then on her fifth attempt in August 2013, at age 64, she made it in 53 hours to swim 110 miles. She became the first person to swim from Cuba to Florida without the protection of a shark tank. Yeah. She's so incredible. And then after that, I can't even believe she did this, but in October, like a month later, she did a 48-hour continuous swim in the middle of Herald Square in Manhattan to raise money for Hurricane Sandy relief in a very specially constructed 120-foot-long swimming pool in Manhattan. Amazing. I kind of think she's an artist in that endurance artist space. It's like pain and long endurance. It's just amazing. Anyway, so before I bring them out, I want to just play you a short clip and to give you a little, bring you up to date on what's been going on.
Messages. One is we should never ever give up. You're never too old to chase your dreams. There he is. It looks like a solitary sport, but it's a team. You are you're my inspiration.
She's got to go to the center. I'll just have to get closer. This was Larry right there.
My friend.
My friend.
She freaking made it. Right? She freaking made it. One of the things that I first want to start with is congratulations.
Thank you, Kathy.
Because I get to do this publicly now, even though I've done it privately and was at the airport, like holding up the sign and whistling at the top of my lungs. I also want to thank somebody very important in both of our lives, Bonnie Stoll. Our mutual best friend who, you know, really was a very prime part of this experience for you. And I want to just acknowledge her and thank her.
When Kathy calls you and I badasses, you have no idea. Bonnie is the badass of the Western world, you know.
It's true.
Yeah.
It's true. And then after that, I want to talk about one of the things that happened is, you know, you came over to our house, to Julie and I's house, before you even attempted the first swim. You went around and told your closest friends that you were about ready to do this, so you sat down at our kitchen table with us, and you talked about that you were going to try to do this, and how did we feel about it, and kind of the feelings around it. And then I always had this dream of being on the boat because of my love of water and my love of the horizon, and we share the love of water often in the summer together here in LA. But my experience of the swim was very abstract because it was always following the red dot. It was the waking up in the middle of the night and logging into my computer and seeing how far you got, whether I was in New Zealand or here or there. It was always this very interesting, abstract experience for me of like wanting to figure out exactly what you were going through. But I followed the red dot. And in starting, I want to read something from a very special book that I love and I find inspiring by this writer by the name of Rebecca Solnit. And she wrote this amazing book called The Field Guide to Getting Lost. And there is a paragraph that I want to read under a chapter called The Blue of Distance. And because I think we both share this love of the ocean, the love of the horizon, the love of the idea of distance and what that means. And so I want to start out with this tonight, if that's okay.
Please.
The world is blue at its edges and its depths. This blue is the light that got lost. Light at the blue end of the spectrum does not travel the whole distance from the sun to us. It disperses among the molecules of the air. It scatters in water. Water is colorless. Shallow water appears to be the color of whatever lies underneath it, but deep water is full of the scattered light. The purer the water, the deeper the blue. The sky is blue for the same reason. But the blue at the horizon, the blue of land that seems to be dissolving into the sky, is a deeper, dreamier, melancholy blue that you see for miles, the blue of distance. This light that does not touch us, does not travel the whole distance, the light that gets lost, gives us the beauty of the world, so much of which is in the color blue. So I want to start out by asking you more on a kind of philosophical level in relationship to this swim, that my blue of distance is the endless horizon, the one that you don't necessarily get to. Your distance in relationship to blue is from shore to shore. So I want to just start talking about that on a little bit more of a philosophical level, if you don't mind.
You know, so much of what you're saying prompts just 100 conversations, frankly. The most obvious being that it's undeniable when you do something like this that it's athletic, it's physical, you know, that's where it originates, and that's the work, it's the discipline. But the truth is, for me, especially in this era, in my 60s, I wasn't chasing after the record. I wasn't chasing after, some new Hall of Fame position. I was chasing after the metaphoric horizon emotion that comes from standing on that shore and looking out. So you say for you, there's this infinitude. Mm-hmm. It's like the Pablo Neruda poem of when you look at the sea, more than looking at space, you see infinitude. And for me, it's kind of like when the Browning phrase is, we should reach for the stars, right? For me, that is the same, but it's literally with the stroke, reaching for the horizon. And as you're reaching, you're filled with hope. You're filled with everything that's possible. And when everybody on this planet told me this swim is impossible, yeah. The doctors and the scientists and the historians and the swimmers and even Bonnie said, look, we've been out there 4 times. It's a rough, wild, dangerous wilderness out there, and it's just impossible. And something in me 5 times stood on that Cuban shore and looked out at that horizon and felt hope. And it wasn't so much even thinking of the other shore. It was being out in that infinitude and the magic of it and the reaching for my virtual stars that was truly the life lesson for me that I wanted out of it. Live large. We're all on a one-way street here, aren't we? And especially perhaps in one's 60s, you're still a young pup. Wow. But perhaps especially at this age, just that impending clock that's ticking a little bit faster. I'm feeling those large imperatives of reaching for infinitude and reaching for the horizon and feeling everything there is that this glorious life has to offer. Mm-hmm. And that's what this swim was for me, much more than counting strokes and setting records.
Mm-hmm. Well, you talked about Bonnie and you talked about everybody in relationship to doubt. Let's go to that place of what doubt was, because I'm one of your close friends, and we did worry. We were very frightened at times. There were moments in which that we were wondering whether or not this was the wisest dream to continue to pursue. In relationship to that, you were always so clear. Like when I would get to Florida and I would see you get off the ship and we would share tears of disappointment of you not being able to get to the goal that you had put forth to you. you never once ever in all of that said that you couldn't make it. And so with the pressure of like the medical community and everybody around you having this doubt, how do you stay focused and clear in relationship to that set of goals that you want?
You know what, Kathy? I'm reluctant to compare myself to anybody, in this world, and I'm not going to compare myself to Steve Jobs, but. It just so happened Bonnie and I were watching the 60-minute special on Steve Jobs. So we're on the couch, kind of in that, relaxed position here. And I think it was Walter Isaacson, his biographer, but I can't remember, somebody being interviewed during it. So this person comes on and says, Steve, he just didn't think that laws were made for him. He didn't think traffic laws and the laws of the universe, and he'd get in front of his people and say, I want a new operating system by Tuesday. And they'd say, we can't even do it in a year, much less, but they did. When he asked him to, and Bonnie went like this, so as we were watching television, she went. So it's not so much that I'm cut of the cloth of the people who say, just tell me I can't do something and I'll do it. There are those people, and I admire them, but that's not me. It's more that I got the impression very early in my own household and started to build a little bit of a superiority complex, that who made those laws? Who said that when you stop at a red light at 3:30 in the morning and no one's coming in any direction, that you're not supposed to go for 3 minutes of your life that you'll never get back. So
that's why they made the cameras for people like you, right? Is like catch those.
I get a lot of tickets. But I think there's just something in me that I listened to Dr. Timothy Noakes, who's the wonderful sports scientist from the University of South Africa in Cape Town, and he says to me, Diana, I've done all the math, and this swim can't be done. There isn't enough glycogen, there isn't enough time, and I said, but I respect you, Tim, but who the hell are you? So I don't know. There was something in me, and I think all of us, and I've seen you work with a focus, and you're very respectful of other people when it comes to your vision of the work you want to do. You're in there. You're out there shooting it. You're in there preparing it. Your vision isn't going to be messed with, and not just in this, but feeling that vision isn't going to be messed with me too. This year, I don't tend to quote Teddy Roosevelt.
I know the quote.
Minute by minute. But this year, I had that, to paraphrase it, I had that in my mind.
You had that Roosevelt
I had
moment.
that Roosevelt, which is basically, you go ahead then. Why don't you just sit comfortably in your chair over there and you criticize. You be the critic, while this one over here engages. This one gets in the ring and gets bloody and dirty and fails over and over and over again. And I said to Bonnie and to Candace and my closest intimates this year, I may fail again. I guess the chances are high. If you were going to Vegas in a bet, I would say don't lose your money, bet against it. Chances are I'm not going to make it, but I'd rather be bold and not afraid and try once again and have the faith and the belief that one day I'm going to walk up on that shore. Mm-hmm. And that's what came to be.
Yeah. Well, let's go back to the color blue, because blue changes for you radically in relationship to the hours that are spent out there.
Yeah.
And what happens for you when the light goes away?
Yeah.
I think for the most part, all of us really feel for you the most in following the red dot when it becomes those dark hours.
Yeah.
And when that blue fades away, does the blue remain in your mind, or where do you go in your mind when it's that dark out there in the middle of the ocean?
Kathy, it's a good question, and it really is divided exactly like that. The azure blue of the Gulf Stream is spectacular. I've been in all the oceans of the world, and I don't know that there's an ocean that's more a piercing blue. an uplifting blue than that Gulf Stream, azure blue. And in the day, I'm happy. I'm cruising along, almost feeling that I'm swimming over the curvature of the earth. We're going so far. No one's ever gone that far before. Swimming with your own little body, and it's a trip. It's an experience, and I'm on a high of it. I'm not a religious person, but I'm just in awe of this blue planet we live on. The majesty of it, and I'm singing. I'm out there stroking, singing. Imagine there's no heaven, and just I'm in a state of glee, and then the night comes, and not only does the most dangerous animal on the planet, the box jellyfish, come up at night, and I've been stung by them. I don't wish it on my worst enemy. You should die when you're stung by them. Yeah. But all of a sudden, we don't use lights. We use no lights because lights attract jellyfish, they attract bait fish, they attract sharks. So we are in the blackest black you can imagine. You can't see the front of your hand. The people on the boat who are very close, they're almost as close as you are, between you and the red curtain over there, Bonnie and then the whole group, they can't see me at all. They just hear the splashing, so they know I'm still there.
You have a light on your...
have a little red light right here, but it's not always visible.
It's not because and especially
now,
if there's waves, I would imagine.
And it was choppy. Wavy this year. But I'm like when the night comes, and by the time it's 2-3 in the morning, I'm in woo. This year I saw the Taj Mahal.
Mm-hmm. How did it look?
It was grand. And it's not like I'm saying to you, I was hallucinating. I saw the Taj Mahal. No, I saw the Taj Mahal.
Right.
It was there. So you think, oh, that'd be fun. It's like, without ruining your brain with chemicals, you can be on an LSD trip.
If you put yourself out in the middle of the ocean swimming for hours.
And be tired.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you can't just drop in. You got to swim out to get there.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, you get,
Trying to imagine that.
It's not an easily earned experience.
No, it's yeah.
But that's not pleasant. You don't think that's fun seeing the Taj Mahal. You're losing control of your will, and you don't know what your will is focused on anymore. And when the sun comes up, it all starts to fade away, and your clarity comes back. And now you're back singing, "Nothing to live or die for," and the next phrase,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But if it wasn't, in the night, do you end up having to count in a different way? I mean, you might see the Taj Mahal, you might start hallucinating, but is there a method to go back to kind of a reasonable place within your head? Is that you're aware of, no. Because I think that I remember hearing you say at one point that often your counting and your singing goes away at night.
It does. It's almost like you feel at night you're in crisis, and
a few nights you were.
Yeah. You're in crisis. You're just everything is you're. It's when you feel most nauseous. I'm having to wear a silicone jellyfish mask for protection. It's very difficult to swim in, difficult to get your breath, and so now you're beginning to vomit, and you've got the mask on. When you start losing your stomach, you're losing weight. And you're cold now. You're losing your strength. Bonnie and her team would just beg me to take any morsel of food in to try to keep that nutritional level up. Then the day comes, and all of a sudden you're drinking your electrolyte drinks again, and you're fortifying again, and you don't want the night to come again, but it's going to come again. So the nights are difficult, and I think almost swimmers. All of them would agree, with that same night and day, happy and in crisis.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Out of the 5 attempts, which was the hardest? Which one, or were all of them equally hard in different ways? Can you piece it apart at this point? I mean, it's almost 3 months, correct?
Yeah, it's 3 months now. Yeah.
And out of 4 years of your life, what is your kind of arc of perception in relationship to trying to accomplish this for the past 4 years? Does it seem fragmented to a certain extent within your head, the story, or how are the pieces beginning to come together now?
No, it's another good question, and I guess I haven't thought about it, but I think it's actually not fragmented. It feels like a continuum, and that's because of the belief system you were talking about before. Because no matter how crushing the disappointment was each of the 4 times. No matter how tough the mountain seemed to me, how tall it seemed to train again for another full year. I respect all sports. I've been a sports journalist all these years, and I'm crazy about, athletes and their vision and their talents and their creativity, but I don't know that there's a tougher sport, a more grueling sport training-wise than this one. And so the countless 12 and 15 and 18 and 20-hour swims, countless of them. You're cold, it's long, it takes a tremendous will to get through all that training. So to not make it and say, it's not just next month, let's rest up and go next week. It's all the way till next summer. Let's train an entire other year. That was tough. So I could, I guess, break each one apart. The box jellyfish, second swim of 2011 was that was tough stuff to live through.
This is a photograph of you after that swim, I believe, right?
Kathy, I love the beauty shots you do.
I know, I make you look so incredibly glamorous in the studio, don't I?
Yeah, that you're honored to be in a Kathy Opie, show, and you're not going to be looking your best.
It's true. It's true. Not too many of my friends actually want to live with the photographs that I take of them. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but I mean, one of the things that was really important to me, another way that I tracked you, and we'll go back to kind of exploring the difficulties, but is that besides following the red dot, every time you would come home, it was really important for me within a week to kind of look at your body, document your body.
Yeah.
And I think this is another question that I have in relationship to a little bit of what we were talking about memory, about being fragmented, that I enter the world and look at the world and track myself through the world in relationship to making photographs. That is what serves my memory as a person. It allows me to begin to figure out a history and create a history for myself. And one of the things that happens is all of this training and everything that you have done, you have it tracked in relationship to writing and kind of logging, and I still am dying to know the hours, and I have to give you back that one log. But what happens for you with the kind of material part of the swim in relationship to the documents afterwards, like my photographs of you right after you've attempted, as well as Tim's amazing documentary of you, The Other Shore? Do you look at those as being able to create another sense of the story for you, or are you disconnected from it to a certain extent because of your own experience being so vastly different than what's being represented?
Isn't it amazing how artists think? Talk about an abstract.
Sorry.
No, it's...
I'm not Oprah.
I said to Kathy once, I went to the Tate Museum in Tate Modern in London. I came back, I said, Kathy, call me ignorant, but I went into a salon, and there's nothing there. I figured the installation isn't there yet. And I went out. The guy said, oh, you didn't spend any time in there. I said, there's nothing in there. He said, go back in. It's on the ceiling. So I go back in, and there are 2 strips of green neon bulbs like this. And I think, oh, my God, you're crazy. This is art. This is what I call it. Anybody could do that. And I tell Kathy this, and she said, so that's your definition of what good art is, that anybody could do it? And so we've had all these conversations
over the years. We have.
What was happening for me is that I was so immersed from the fall of 2009. So that's 4 years ago now. I had this dream, and it stretched back for 35 years. It's such a story. I mean, we love stories. That's why we go to the movies, and that's why we read to children. We all love stories, and I love a story. I love to tell a story.
And you're a great storyteller.
Thank you, honey. And I love to hear a story, but I'm living, just living out loud, a true Greek story of a 35-year dream that's authentic. and has no ulterior motives to it whatsoever. It's just pure. It's this land of Cuba, this forbidden, wondrous land, and this body of water that is, it could be that if you and I put down on this floor all the nautical charts of the Earth's surface, except for the Arctic areas, but around the equatorial globe, we couldn't find a more difficult 100 miles to swim than this body because of the currents, the unpredictable winds, the swirling eddies, the sharks, the jellyfish. It's the most difficult, and there's something about all that just lived so large for me that to get to the things, I would take out my little journals, or I'd pack my little goggles and bathing suit bags, and it was all so tender and precious for me because this dream was just pulsing in me. And now I'm home, and that Cuban flag that's flying in my Korean neighborhood, in the front yard, and those bathing suits and things, I'm just filled with a pride and a contentment. And it's a bit like I've been saying often recently, but it's just so true that the Henry David Thoreau quote that goes something like, when you achieve your dreams, it's not so much what you get, it's who you become. And I wanted to be that bold person and live it out. And those 4 years were all about don't let go, don't give up. Just press on, press. You're going to get there. And so getting there isn't sitting down with Oprah.
Right.
The getting there is feeling that I am that person.
Right. It's the trying to get the balance of the legs again as you actually walk on the shore.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
One of the things that you said to us, your friends, don't worry, this question isn't as abstract, is that after the swim, you said completing the swim, that you now feel that you can be who you really are.
I said that?
Yeah. You don't remember saying that?
I don't remember saying that, no.
Oh. Okay, well, maybe I won't go there with you.
No, you can go there, but I don't know.
Do you feel that's...
Yeah,
no.
I think I've been. It's almost like I'm too old and too grounded to change much. The meeting President Obama. It's wonderful. I admire the man, and I was honored to go to his office. And sitting here with you on stage, I'm such a huge fan of not only the work that you produce, but the way you go about it, the way you live your life. And I can look around the room at Candace and Bonnie and so many people here whom I admire, and I can't relate to that. Now I become the person. I've been this person for a long time,
Yeah.
But the dream itself and choosing something so nearly impossible. I went to your son's school last year.
Yeah,
Oliver,
which was
I went to school,
amazing.
and one of Oliver's little friends was wearing an Extreme Dream T-shirt. And I called on her and said, "What's your name?" She said, "Lauren." I said, "Lauren, what's that mean to you? What's Extreme Dream?" And she said, it's like when something it's probably impossible, but it just might be possible." And I thought, how a 9-year-old, how more beautifully could you express it? So I don't think I've become any different, but maybe I've become the person I could admire. I could say that,
Yeah. No, I think that, it was interesting because when you said that, I was just thinking about, well, you are who you are throughout this process. I mean, one of the things that I think that has been so incredible for me in terms of following that red dot and following you through this process is the utter honesty in it. And I'm always humbled by ideas of being as honest and true to yourself as possible in life. And I think that that's one of the reasons why you've always inspired me, is this kind of relationship to perseverance and the honesty behind your relationship to having that perseverance. And I think it's hard for us to do it. I had a friend the other day say to me, like, well, you live with no fear, Kathy. And it was so interesting to me because I think that people say that to you as well, like you live with no fear, but I know you feared those box jellyfish. I know that there was fear in relationship to this accomplishment of yours and this goal of yours, and there was a huge wakes of emotion. So what does that, when people come up to you and they say to you things like, oh, are you going to try this or that, or like they think of you only in relationship to being a daredevil versus truly the arc of this kind of accomplishment in relationship to what a human being can actually really do? Like, I mean, how do you respond to those to those kinds of comments?
You mean like the new agents I'm working with and are looking for me to do like a Nick Wallenda, walk across the Grand Canyon now? It is so heartening to me, and I feel so lucky about this, is that as eccentric as this enterprise is, so how many people in the world are ever going to swim from Cuba to Florida, even try, or something on this level in the ocean? If none, very few. But those people on that beach in Cuba, and perhaps some of you out there, but I've been hearing from people all over the world. And as eccentric as it is, people understand it and they feel it, because those words, never ever give up, and you're never too old to chase your dreams, it is authentic. I'm not a philosopher standing on stage spouting off life philosophies. I'm living them out loud. And it's almost amazing to me. Like, I'm sitting down to write a book right now, and of course the drama, the story itself, which is the jellyfish and the training and the body
and the storms
and all
and
of it.
Yeah,
it's real, and it is that, as we talked about before, it's that Greek journey, and so it's there. But all of those life lessons that swirl around under it and propel it, are there too. And I think that's what people relate to. When I saw those people's eyes, Candace said to me when we finished, she said, it wasn't just the heat, it wasn't just the temperature that day. There was energy. Those couple thousand people on that beach, there was a huge emotional heart energy on that beach. And when they were looking in my eyes, they were crying. They were just tears spilling down their faces. And what they were feeling was, I needed to see this. I need to witness somebody who didn't give up. That's what I need from my life. And I think that in sports in general, you use the word honesty and authenticity. You watch a body of an athlete and you can't pretend. She can't pretend that they've been doing anything but what they've been doing.
Right, only that.
They carve that body.
Yeah.
And so at 64,
Sorry.
Okay. At 64, but nevertheless, talk about honesty and authenticity. That's what I've been doing for those 4 years, is swimming. And that body wears it and shows it. And I think that's what the relationship I'm having right now with the public is an authenticity. There's a trust that you said you were going to do this, and you said you weren't going to quit until you finished it, and you did it. Yeah, you freaking did it.
Yeah, you freaking did it. So let's see how we're doing here.
Go ask me some more abstract questions.
I know.
I love when Kathy says, it's the construct of the, and when I hear the word construct, I'm just, woo, I'm going.
I'm a UCLA professor in the art department. I can't help myself. Abstract questions. I'll ask a direct question, not an abstract questions. I mean, you turn around and you look at the photographs, and I also said that a lot of my friends have issues living with the images that I've made. What what is it for me to have documented this in the last 4 years of having this record of your body after these attempts?
First of all, going back to the 1970s, I've been photographed a lot,
Yeah.
a lot of magazines and whatnot. And it's like my friend from Sports Illustrated, Heinz Klutmeyer, said to me once. He says that he feels that his ratio is 100-1. And I mean, this is a world-class photographer, a photojournalist, not fine arts photographer like you, but he feels that he takes 100 photos of any athlete, and one of them is going to be the printable cover of Sports Illustrated. When I go into Kathy's studio after each swim, there's been 4 years now, I literally I watch her. First of all, she prepares, she sets up, she already has in her mind what it is, and when I come in, she's made sure that there's no makeup. Every blemish and every little roll or whatnot is going to be right out there. And she takes maybe, I swear, 12 photos. It's just amazing to me that your perfectionism and your vision of exactly what it's going to be. I've been more interested in your process and our conversations during it. I'm thinking like, okay, we're going to order lunch now and do a couple hundred more. And she says, no, I got it. I got it. It's like 10, 12 photos, and that's it. And they're all so, Kathy's work. It's stark. Talk about authentic. It's, it lives. It comes out and lives with you. Now, do I want this photo on my wall at home? No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. But
I want your surfers at home.
Yeah.
That's who I want at home.
yeah, the horizon.
Yeah.
You want to look
Yeah,
out
the
at the
horizon.
horizon.
There you go.
You want to stay within the horizon.
Yeah.
I usually want to stay within the horizon too, but I can't help but not look at people and want to look at people and want to record it. And part of this is not only you being one of the closest friends, but it was so important for me for you to come to the studio, and this is the victory shot. This is the purple background when you finally made it, and in a way, it's what I'm always interested in is the fact that it's utterly heroic in its honesty without trying to be what we think of as the iconic heroic image of the great athlete. So it's, to me, I'm interested always in that kind of tension of that there is this utter truth in it without it performing on itself, that it's just you, that I'm just basically bearing witness to you. So, and that's what was hard for me of not being able to be on the swims, was that I couldn't physically bear witness of watching you complete it.
And by the way, I wanted to say, I'm sure many of you here know Kathy's, incredibly diverse body of work. But having seen so many sports photographs in my life, I thought when you did the teenage football players,
the football players,
I thought, how could anybody do them better than they've been done? But when you say you didn't want to do the iconic sports photo, I just was blown away by those young boys in Louisiana and Alaska playing football with their, proudly standing with their helmets. But it was a comment to me on masculinity in our society. And if you're in Texas, you are required as a boy to play football.
Yeah.
But maybe you don't want to. Maybe you're afraid. Maybe you have no football in your genes at all. But you're going to stand there with your helmet and do your proud football look. And there's never been a photo like that in Sports Illustrated. They were just fascinating.
Yeah. No, I don't think that magazines do that, and sports photography really, they look at always the moment of action. And it's kind of like one of the ways that Tim's films operate. And if any of you haven't seen The Other Shore, I think it's still showing on Showtime right now,
I
right?
think it is, maybe, yeah.
But it's interesting because that film, it goes back to that question of ideas of representation, and it's like that's where I get to be all arty again on you. Is that it's very dramatic, that film, and it's incredible in terms of the kind of drama that's portrayed, which is part of a good story too. There was definitely drama, all of that. It was documentary. It was actually being shown, but the other thing that happens within documentary is the mundane. Like sometimes there was a moment, like when you were out there following the red dot was one thing, but I wanted to force my idea of like the performance would be like literally trying to stay up the exact same amount of time and watching you. And I was able to do that a bit at Herald Square. Like it was the only time that I physically, with the webcam on you, could actually see you swimming back and forth. And I remember at one moment at Herald Square, it was about 3 o'clock in the morning, and a friend of yours had entered the pool and I called Bonnie. I said, "What's going on with Diana? Is she okay?" And Bonnie said, "I think she's sleeping." But you were still moving. You were still swimming. But it's so interesting. Like you kind of want. In a way, the training is so mundane and it's so important in relationship to you doing what is a very dramatic feat. How do you weigh those two things out, or do you think about it in that way?
No, the training stuff, and I've tried just to maybe get something more out of the long hours, to listen to tapes and books on tape, etc. But really, it's when you're out there, the books on tape don't work. You're literally immersed in it, and there's just no other way of getting around it than to do the work. And somehow, even though the hours are long and grueling, there is something magical about it at the same time. There's something about being able to pursue and persist and cruise at that sort of speed for that long. And I guess there's an ego to it, to say there are very few people alive who can do this.
Yeah.
There's something that it's funny. I'm in this. It's clear to me that this was the epic swim. This was the swim of my dreams, and I'm done. I need to live in this epic way. I need to find a way to live this large out of the water. Mm-hmm. But people come up to me literally every day somewhere, airport somewhere, and say, "What's your next one going to be?"
What's your next
I just
one
can't
gonna
wait.
be?
I love those little red dots. I just can't. That was so exciting, but they were just there for 53 hours, and I was there for years and years.
Yeah.
So, just as those people on the beach were looking at me to find their way to living large and feeling, feeling their lives and fulfilling them, feeling unwavering commitment. It's the high of life as far as I'm concerned. And I need to find that way outside the water, just like everybody else does who's living kind of a life of grays instead of black and white drama, know.
So we have to look forward to the book.
Yeah,
and the one woman show.
I've always wanted to do a one woman show. I used to be very intimidated to think like I'm no Lily Tomlin, and I'm not.
I think you're pretty funny.
Yeah, I can be funny.
Yeah,
I can be funny. But I think I have the ability to stand on stage and tell a series of stories that are somewhat poignant and somewhat funny, and take an arc of a life and piece it together. And I will do that over the next couple of years. To get very, talk about mundane, superficial. I want to do Dancing with the Stars.
We all want you to do Dancing with the Stars.
Yeah,
so it's not.
Although the joke is, people ask me who my partner would want to be, and I said, well, Julianne Howe is beautiful. I'd take her. But I figured since Chaz Bono was on there, surely a lesbian dancing would be all right. I've been told that I wouldn't get very far in the competition, so I'm now looking at Derek Howe instead.
You're a good dancer. I think you would get pretty far.
It's one thing just to stand on stage and, I don't stand on stage, but to get on the ballroom floor and, make moves of a salsa kind of thing. So I can do that. Now it's another thing to be thrown in the air and, down through the legs like this and then be twirled around like this, So
Well. Would you be thrown or would you be the thrower?
No, I would be thrown. I've been told that if I get on this show, I'm being thrown.
Oh,
Yeah.
I really view you as the thrower.
Thank you.
Not the thrown.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you.
Just,
I'm
just
right
so
there
you
with
know,
you.
Just
I'm
so
right
you
there
know
with
that my perception of it.
Yeah.
I think I think we should go to questions now. Maybe. What do you think?
Yeah. Ready for questions. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much. And
Thank you, Kathy.
and
Thank you.
I just want to thank you for not only all the years of our friendship, but also inspiring our family so much, because it really moved us. So thank
Thank
you.
you, Kathy.
I think you succeeded all 5 times.
Thank you.
But to use the title of this new Robert Redford movie, if in an alternate history, if you hadn't made it not in September, would you think that to use this title, All Is Lost?
You know, it's a great question because, the debate is always, is it the journey or is it the destination? And our team was extremely proud all 4 times. The courage that we showed and the innovation, the scientific discovery that we came to, as in every major expedition, whether it's up Everest or snowshoeing across Mount Everest, whatever, Antarctica, whether you make it or not, you come to new discovery every time, and new technical, new physical, new will, something new. And our team over the 35 years evolved, and we walked around tall when we didn't make it. Had I not made it this time, it's a moot point, isn't it? But I do believe it's not a matter of that the will would have wilted, but I think I was at the end of discovery. I don't think that there was anything more to bring to the party. We had learned a little bit more this year about the eddies in the Gulf Stream with space telemetry, learned more about the box jellyfish this year and worked with a prostheticist to make that mask. And not making it this year, I just don't, you can't just ram your head against a wall unintelligently. So I don't think there was something to bring back to it. And I will say that I'm shallow enough that the destination was sweeter than all the journeys. Yeah, in the end.
Thank you. I don't think this is a philosophical question, but maybe it is. I'm curious about the choice not to use a shark cage.
The public thinks when this record is announced, they say the first person to do it without a shark cage, they think, oh my God, she must just be so brave. She's going to go out there and face these large predators. And of course there is that. They're dangerous. And all the shark experts in the world, start their first statement to you by saying the chances. With all this flotilla of boats around you and the shark shield electronics, that are under the kayaks that are close to me, and the shark divers in there, and, a shark, they know what their food is, and they're not going to come up and get you. On the other hand, we know very little about them, and when you're, out there 50 or 60 miles and perhaps this oceanic white tip, which is aggressive and quick, hasn't eaten in a couple of weeks, your leg looks good. It looks it's like dinner bell time. The shark cage isn't even so much, swimming without the shark cage isn't to be brave and expose oneself to the sharks. It's that whenever you have a large structure like that and it's moving forward, this is the way Jack LaLanne moved the Queen Mary with his teeth. And he told me how to do this, but maybe that's what I'll do next. Yeah.
We have that to look forward to.
Yeah, I know there's a job at SeaWorld waiting for me. That's for sure. But when these large structures, whether it's a big jellyfish netting or a big shark cage, and none of those are allowed if you use them, there's a big asterisk next to your name. But as they move along, even at under 2 miles an hour, which is most of us out there are swimming at, little eddies create around the side like this. And those eddies come around the back and they start pushing that structure forward. And you're going at a minimum of twice the speed, sometimes up to 3 and 4 times, depending on the wave action of what you can swim at. So just like wearing flippers makes you a different animal and you go faster, using a cage makes you go faster. And that's really why we call this swim, or anybody who does swims, without a cage, meaning that there wasn't any forward assistance. I like everybody. Oh,
We have a question. We
oh,
have a
that's
question
what
over
that
here.
means. Oh.
Diana, a lot of your own success as an athlete has been based on persistence. When you're functioning as a sports journalist and you're interviewing somebody who is not a solitary athlete but a team athlete, how does your view change of them if somebody was drafted high and you saw somebody come in with what the scouts considered and the coaches full potential, and then you see them several years later and they haven't fulfilled that potential? As somebody who was so persistent yourself and keeps plugging away even when things don't go right, when you're interviewing that person who is on the second, about to enter their second contract or something, does it influence the way you interview them or the way you see them?
Well, that's a weird
Yeah.
question. No, and I mean that with all respect. When you're as a true journalist, you don't bring anything that you feel into it. You just observe. Kathy and I have been discussing recently. We were both spending time with a journalist, and we both noted that she was somewhat young. She's just about 30 years old, and as a young person, before every question, she seemed to bring her own worldview. It doesn't mean that I'm not interested in people, but when I'm being interviewed by someone and spending a couple days with them, and they're just there to get my story, it doesn't mean we might get to know each other, but she was sharing with me, all what she thinks about life and presuming who I am. And so, your father was such and such, so I'm sure when you're out in the oceans, and I said, let's just start at ground zero. And, so I'm never going to bring anything of who I am as a person or as an athlete when I go to interview another athlete. But I will tell you that deep down, the athletes I admire the most are not the most talented. Jimmy Connors was by far my favorite tennis player.
Mm-hmm.
He was rude at times, grabbing his crotch. He was not the most beautiful. He didn't have the prettiest strokes, but that man played as if it was his last moment on life, every stroke he ever took, and I loved watching him play. So I definitely, am not drawn to the talented ones who don't fulfill their potential, and drawn to the ones who are dogged and rise far above their potential. But when you go to, as you say, as a journalist, cover the story, I'm just there to find out, who they are and what's going on, and don't bring that point of view right then during that professional moment. By the way, can I tell you that my favorite question, of course, you all know the story now, but over these 4 years, when people ask me, and journalists even, but certainly just people on the street, and I'm very, I'm flattered if anybody wants to know anything about it, but people say to me, now, by the way, when you do this thing, are you going to have any boats or any people with you at all?
Yeah, right, exactly.
And I think,
yeah.
no, I'm going to start out with celestial navigation. And then I'm going to carry a Bowie knife in my teeth. And I'll hunt fish and just skin them alive. And then I'll drag a desalinization plant behind me so I can create fresh water. So that's I think that's my favorite question of all the questions.
I know.
Darn.
That was your question?
Yeah.
No, let us hear it. I'm sorry.
That's okay. Diana, first of all, I just want to say you've been an incredible source of inspiration for me since I was a young girl.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you. Could you say that again?
And you continue to be.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I have a lot of questions, but I'm going to just distill it to one. I'm wondering what you, as a little girl, looking at yourself now, what would you say? How do you see yourself from the perspective of you as a child growing up?
She survived. That's what I would say. Very well. And what would you say?
Well, I could cry.
Yeah.
I told a story once, a corporate speech on stage about the sexual abuse I went through as a child. And that night, I went out to dinner with some of the faculty of the university that was there, and there was an older woman. She's retired. I think she was in her upper 80s at that time. And we all went out to a noisy restaurant. You couldn't hear a thing except the person right next to you. And I was seated right next to her. And she had a light in her eyes, and you could tell that her colleagues in the university respected her, and she was kind of the queen. But I was close to her, and so we started talking, and at one point she reached her arm like this, and her sleeve pulled back, and I saw the numbers etched in her wrist. And I said to her, "You're a survivor." And she said, "Yeah." And I said, "Boy, this is pretty crazy, and we're in this noisy restaurant, but we're almost having this intimate night together. Do you want to tell me about it?" And she started. She was 3. Her sister was 6. Her father said if they ever came to get their family, he wouldn't go. They'd have to shoot him. They came. The father wouldn't go. They shot him. They took the mother and the 2 daughters on a train to Treblinka. And when they got off the train, the mother held the 6-year-old in her right hand. She held the 3-year-old, this woman I met, in her left hand. And when they got to the bottom of the platform, the mother and daughter were taken that way, and this little girl never saw them again. And that day, she became the SS officer's concubine at age 3. And she started in for the 2.5 years that she spent at Treblinka. Anal sex, oral sex, and intercourse every day, many times a day. And this woman is telling me this at this dinner, and I started to weep. Partly because of her story, and partly because I felt so ashamed that I told my little story of my little girlhood on stage that night. And she grabbed my hands and took me in a corridor of the restaurant. And she said, "Number 1, you never compare yourself to anyone else, because all of us, every human being on this planet, goes through pain and heartache and sometimes worse. And it's up to you to find your way." And I said, "How did you ever find your way? You have the light of light in your eyes. How did you?" And she said, "I was adopted by a family in Paris, and the first night I got there, I was only 5.5. I had just survived, and the Allies came and got us, and I was taken to Paris, and this woman took me in the garden. She held me, and she said, 'Tell me everything. Bare your soul.' And I told her, and I didn't even know the words for intercourse. I told her everything I had to do, and I cried, and I was lost, and she held me, and she said, 'Listen to me. You will never be able to forget this. It's going to be in your soul. But keep it in your soul. You know why? It's a beautiful life. People are beautiful. You ran into a few very bad people, but don't live it on your skin. Keep it in your soul.' And I don't compare myself to anybody anymore because it's not fair. I'm just living my life. But that little girl who didn't accept laws and had a very strong personality had to survive somehow. And I look back at that little girl and I say, it wasn't your fault, and you ran into a couple of bad people, and this is a beautiful life. And most people are good. So I didn't get all heavy on you, but that little girl, it took me a long time to grow out of some darkness of that childhood. By the way, feeling at the same time I think it takes people a while to figure out too that many truths can be true at the same time, even though they seem conflicting. So there was a darkness, and I was terrified in my own home in a lot of ways. In other ways, I'm tremendously privileged and grew up with travel and foreign languages and education and sport and all kinds of opportunities, and had a very lucky childhood as well.
Yeah.
What are you going to do about creating world peace? That's a light note, isn't it? When you finished your swim, this last one, did you find that your professional colleagues, either in the sports world or in the newscasting, sportscasting, treated you differently? Was it now she did it and she's over she tried 4 times and wasn't able to make it, and now you're like in a special class? Did you notice a difference in the way you were treated afterwards?
Should I answer that?
Yeah, go ahead. You take that one.
I'll let Diana take it as well. I mean, it was interesting for us because after Diana would complete the swims, and I'd be down in Florida and I'd be holding her. At one moment, I have one of the most tender moments with her, in which we went in the shower together, and I just washed all the muck off of her, very tenderly, just washed your body after the swim, and I would say, but don't you understand, Diana? Like you didn't make it, and you had emotion around it. You would cry, which you should do. And I said, but you're still this amazing person who persevered, and you're our hero. And I think your friends kept saying that to you through this process, as we worried about your continuation of it through more years than we thought it would go on for. And I said to Bonnie the other day, with kind of the attention that Diana has had around the swim, I said, wow, like people do really want that completion. They want that in a certain way. And I always felt like it was so complete within what she was trying to attempt that it didn't really, I wanted it for her, but for myself, I didn't need for her to have that shore-to-shore completion. I knew that that's what Diana wanted, but it was so interesting to see the perspective of the media and what happened around that frenzy after she really did have that completion. So I think there is a different idea in relationship to sports about that notion of what a winner is, which has always been my little bit of a problem around sports sometimes. It's like that idea of the winner. I'm like, well, come on, man, aren't we all winners? I have that more attitude. But now you can talk about it a little bit.
I don't think it's just sports. There are sort of two facets to what you're asking there. And what is your name, sir? Roger. It's something that you brought up as well, is that in my, unscientific survey, people who have written in from points around the world have talked much more about the heroism of the attempts, and especially the courage to go after something after such public failures in the face of another public failure, perhaps. People have been more lauding about that from other cultures, but it's not just sports in this society. Americans are just a country of focus on winners. And I can't, and I think anybody who has some degree of fame can't be very concerned with what that public feels about me. I have to look to my closest friends in life, and I have to have that tether of reality, because what happens when they're not there? And we're only 3 months away from this, and it's not the heat. The heat isn't there like it was. And what will be just a year from now and 2 years from now. So colleagues didn't treat me any differently. The public has treated me differently and responded and risen up. And I'm not pretending I'm not immune to that. It feels good, and there is a connection on the mutual sort of let's all be inspired and be our best selves and do what we want in life. But the winning thing is very important to Americans. And, this time, my friends at CNN, who have been very loyal to me throughout this whole trajectory, and the New York Times, the Washington Post, even Tim, my nephew, making the documentary, they all said, I guess it's admirable if you want to just keep chasing this dream. Are you going to chase it the rest of your life? And if you make it to the other shore, we'll be there. But we're not going to waste our resources again. We're not going to come out and follow it. None of them came on the swim. My team was there. My team showed up for me again, but none of that press came again because they were just they were sick of the effort. They wanted the victory. Yeah.
And you got the victory. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.